The battlefield was silent now, but the silence was heavy, almost crushing. Smoke still rose in thin black lines from the broken land, and the smell of burned metal and ash filled the air. The war had ended only hours before, but the ground still remembered the fighting. Broken weapons lay scattered across the dirt. Pieces of armor shone faintly under the weak light of a sun hidden behind grey clouds. She walked slowly through the wreckage, her heart sinking with every step. She was a mother, and she had come looking for only one thing, her daughter. All around her bodies lay still. Soldiers from both sides, alien and human, mixed together in the dirt. None of them would rise again. She stepped over them carefully, afraid to look too closely, afraid to recognize a familiar face. Her daughter had been young, too young for war. She had begged her not to go, but her daughter had insisted. "If I do not fight, our people will fall," she had said with courage in her eyes. The mother remembered that last moment before battle, when her daughter had walked away carrying a weapon almost too heavy for her hands. Now that memory felt like a knife in her chest. She pushed forward, her eyes searching, her hands trembling. The battlefield stretched wide, a sea of grief with no end. Her legs felt weak, but still she moved. Every piece of armor she found, every broken shield, made her heart beat faster with dread. Then at last she saw something. A small piece of cloth, torn and dirty, but still carrying the mark of her daughter's regiment. She froze. Her breath caught. Her body felt like stone. She bent down and picked up the cloth. It was stained with blood. Her hands shook so badly she could hardly hold it. Her chest tightened, and the world blurred with tears. She dropped to her knees, clutching the cloth to her heart. Her worst fear was coming true. "She is gone," the mother whispered, her voice broken, the words almost too soft to hear. "My daughter is gone." The silence of the battlefield seemed to answer her. The wind blew across the ruins, carrying the faint sound of something metallic creaking in the distance. She bowed her head, her body shaking with grief. She had lost her daughter to the war, just as she had feared. The pain was unbearable, sharp and endless, cutting deeper than any wound of battle. But then something strange caught her attention. A shadow moved at the edge of her vision. She lifted her head, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. The figure was walking through the wreckage, moving slowly but with purpose. At first, she thought it might be another soldier, perhaps one of her own people. But then she saw the armor. Dark, heavy, and unfamiliar, it was human. Her heart raced. She had been told not to trust humans. Many of her people saw them as dangerous outsiders, unpredictable and selfish. She pulled back, hiding behind a broken wall, her eyes fixed on him. What was he doing here, walking alone through the ruins of the battle? Then she saw what he carried. In his arms was a body, wrapped in a long golden cloth that shimmered even under the grey sky. The human held it carefully, as if it was something precious, something fragile. The mother's breath stopped. Something about the way the small form rested against him made her chest tighten with fear and hope at the same time. The human walked closer, his face hard and serious, his eyes fixed ahead. She stepped out from her hiding place, her voice trembling. "Who are you? What are you carrying?" The human stopped. For a moment, the battlefield seemed to fall into even deeper silence. His eyes met hers, and there was no anger there, no threat, only a heavy sadness, the kind that comes from carrying a burden too great. Slowly, carefully, he lowered the golden cloth to show her the face beneath it. Her world shattered and then froze. It was her daughter. Her skin was pale, her body limp, but it was her. The mother gasped, stumbling forward as if her legs no longer obeyed her. She reached out, but her hands trembled too much to touch her child. Her eyes filled again with tears, but these tears were different. They were not only grief. They were shock, confusion, and a fragile, trembling hope. You brought her back," the mother whispered, her voice shaking. The human nodded slowly. His voice was low, steady, but filled with weight. She fought bravely. "I could not leave her behind." The mother looked down at her daughter, torn between despair and the smallest spark of belief. Could it be? Could her daughter still be alive? The human held her with a care that no enemy ever would. He was not her people, yet he had carried her child as if she was his own blood. The battlefield stretched around them, silent and grey. But at that moment, something had changed. The mother's grief was still sharp, still deep, but it was no longer the end. It was the beginning of something she did not yet understand. And in that silence, with her daughter lying between them, she felt the first touch of something she never thought she would feel toward a human: trust. The battlefield still carried its weight of silence. Only the faint crackle of burning metal and the whisper of the wind moved through the ruins. The mother stood frozen, her eyes locked on the figure who had appeared from the smoke. He was human, and he carried her daughter in his arms as if she were the most fragile thing in the universe. Her heart raced with confusion and fear. Why would a human soldier be here after the battle had already ended? Why would he, among so many bodies, carry her child? Was this a trap, or something stranger than that? The human stopped a short distance away, his boots heavy against the broken earth. His armor was dark, scratched by weapons, yet it seemed strong, a second skin of war. His face was hard, sharp with fatigue, and his eyes told of battles fought too long. But when he looked at the mother, there was no hate in them, only a quiet sadness. He lowered himself slightly, shifting the golden cloth to reveal the girl's pale face. The mother gasped and covered her mouth. It was truly her daughter. Limp, wounded, silent, but alive, or at least not yet gone. The human's voice broke the heavy silence. "She fought bravely," he said. His tone was steady, but the weight of his words carried pain. "I could not leave her behind." The mother staggered forward, torn between trust and doubt. She wanted to hold her child, but fear stopped her hand. Humans were not her people. They had fought together at times, but suspicion always remained between their races. Could she trust this soldier? Or was her daughter already lost, carried here as a cruel reminder? "You saved her?" she asked, her voice trembling. The soldier nodded, his grip tightening slightly on the girl as though he would not let anyone else carry her. "She was alone when I found her. The battle raged around us. I shielded her from the fire." He paused, lowering his head. "She asked me to bring her home." Those words struck the mother's heart like a blade of hope. Her daughter had spoken to him. She had asked a human, not her own kind, to return her. That meant she had still been alive then, still holding on. The mother's eyes filled with tears. "Is she alive?" she whispered. The soldier did not answer at once. He looked down at the girl in his arms, watching her chest carefully, as if waiting for proof of breath. "She is not gone," he said finally. "But she is weak, very weak. I have done all I could." The mother's hands shook as she reached out. She brushed her fingers against her daughter's cold skin, and her heart broke again at the touch. She wanted to scream, to demand why fate had been so cruel. Yet at the same time, a strange feeling rose within her, a fragile thread of gratitude toward the man who stood before her. The soldier's armor bore deep scars, burned marks, and dents from enemy fire. He had risked everything on that field, and still he carried her daughter with care. He did not stand like an enemy. He stood like a protector, but the mother's grief fought against her rising trust. She stepped back slightly, suspicion in her eyes. "Why?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Why would a human do this?" "She is not yours. You risked your life for someone you did not even know." The soldier met her gaze without flinching. His voice was quiet, almost tired. "Because she deserved to come home. No one deserves to be left behind in the dirt." The mother felt the weight of his words. They were simple, but they carried something more powerful than she expected. Perhaps this was what humanity was known for, a stubborn refusal to surrender, even against death itself. A sound broke through the silence, a crack of stone shifting nearby. The mother froze, her eyes darting toward the shadows. From the far side of the battlefield, the faint outlines of enemy scouts moved closer. Survivors of the other side, armed and cautious, stepping among the ruins. The war might have ended, but danger still lingered. The soldier shifted his stance, pulling the girl closer in his arms. His jaw tightened, his body alert. He looked at the mother briefly, and in his eyes she saw no fear, only resolve. He would not let them take the girl. He would not let them finish what the war had already tried to claim. The mother's chest tightened. She realized something then. The human was not here by chance. He had made a choice. Out of all the lives on that field, he had chosen her daughter to save. And now, standing before her, he was choosing again to protect her, even when enemies gathered in the shadows. Her grief was still sharp, but alongside it grew a fragile spark she could not deny. Shock, suspicion, and now something she never thought she would feel toward a human. Trust. The battlefield, which moments ago had been only a graveyard of sorrow, now held a different weight. A fragile hope stood between them, carried in the arms of a man she had once been told to fear. And as the shadows of new danger crept closer, the mother realized her daughter's fate was now bound not only to her, but also to the human who refused to let her fall. The air grew colder as the shadows lengthened across the broken land. The human soldier still held the girl close, her fragile body wrapped in the golden cloth. The mother walked beside him now, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. She searched desperately for signs of life, any twitch, any breath, any spark, but the silence of her child's body tore at her heart. Her hands shook as she touched her daughter's cheek. The skin was pale and cool, but not yet the still cold of death. That single detail gave her the strength to keep moving. She turned to the human, her voice unsteady. "Tell me what happened," she demanded. The soldier's eyes stayed forward, scanning the battlefield as though expecting danger at every step. His voice, low and steady, cut through the quiet. "She was trapped when her unit fell. The enemy pressed hard, fire coming from all sides. She fought back. Brave, stronger than many I have seen. But then she was struck. I saw her fall." His words stabbed deep into the mother's chest. She imagined her daughter's small body collapsing in the dirt, surrounded by chaos. But before grief crushed her again, the soldier's tone changed. I went to her. She was still breathing, barely. I shielded her with my armor, carried her through the fire. I would not let them take her. The mother stared at him. A human risking everything to protect her daughter. It was hard to believe. Yet here he was, carrying her child even now, refusing to leave her side. "Is she dying?" the mother asked, her voice breaking on the last word. The soldier stopped walking. He looked down at the girl's face, watching her shallow chest. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his jaw tightened. "She is between life and death. If nothing is done, she will slip away." The mother's throat closed, her knees weak. Her daughter was balanced on the edge of death, and she was powerless to pull her back. She turned to the soldier, desperation in her eyes. "Can your people save her? Do you have medicine, something that can help?" The soldier hesitated, then set the girl down gently on a broken piece of stone. He knelt beside her, pulling open a small pouch at his side. Inside were strange tools, glowing vials, and compact medical devices unlike anything the mother had seen before. "These are human treatments," he said firmly. "They are not made for her kind. If I use them, there is no promise they will work. They may even harm her." The mother's heart pounded. Her daughter's life hung in the balance, and now the choice fell on her shoulders. Trust a human's methods, alien and untested, or do nothing and watch her child fade away. She looked at the soldier's face. It was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes carried no lies. He had carried her daughter this far with care and determination. Could she risk denying him now? Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Do it. Save her." The soldier nodded once. He pulled out a vial filled with clear blue liquid that glowed faintly in the fading light. He attached it to a small injector and pressed it gently against the girl's arm. The device hissed softly, delivering its contents into her body. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The mother's chest ached as she held her breath, waiting, praying. Then slowly, a flicker passed across her daughter's face. Her lips parted and the faintest sound escaped, a broken gasp, weak but alive. The mother fell to her knees, tears rushing down her face. She grasped her daughter's hand, whispering her name over and over, begging her to stay. The soldier leaned back slightly, relief in his eyes, though his expression stayed guarded. "She is fighting," he said quietly, "but she is not safe yet. Her wounds are deep. She may not survive without more care." The mother nodded through her tears, unable to let go of her daughter's hand. She could feel warmth returning, the smallest proof of life, and that alone was enough to ignite hope in her chest. But their fragile moment was broken by movement in the distance. Figures moved through the ruins, enemy survivors creeping closer, weapons drawn. The soldier's gaze snapped toward them, his body tense. He rose to his feet, his hand tightening around his rifle. "They are coming," he said sharply. "We must move." The mother's heart pounded. She looked from the enemies to her daughter, weak and unable to be moved quickly. Panic clawed at her. "We cannot run. She is too fragile." The soldier's eyes burned with resolve. He shifted his stance, placing himself between them and the approaching threat. "Then I will hold them off." "You keep her alive." The mother stared at him in shock. He was human, not her kin, yet he stood ready to risk his life again for her child. She wanted to protest, to tell him he could not stand alone. But the way he lifted his weapon left no doubt. He was ready to face death again if it meant the girl lived. Her grief mixed with awe as she clutched her daughter close. The sound of enemy boots grew louder, closer. The soldier glanced back at her only once, his voice calm but strong. "Do not let her give up. As long as she breathes, there is hope." The mother held her daughter tighter, tears falling freely. Between life and death, her child's fragile fate now hung in the hands of two beings, her own desperate love and the unyielding will of a human who refused to let death win. The battlefield was no longer just a place of loss. It had become something more, a trial, a moment that would decide not only her daughter's survival, but also the bond between their kinds. And as the first shot rang out from the shadows, the mother realized the fight was far from over. The ruined battlefield trembled with new danger. Shadows shifted between the broken walls, and the sound of boots echoed like drums in the distance. The enemy survivors had seen movement, and they were closing in. The human soldier stood tall, rifle raised, his body shielding the alien mother and her wounded daughter. The air around him seemed to thicken with tension, every heartbeat louder than the last. The mother clutched her child tightly, feeling the faint rhythm of breath still there, fragile but alive. She looked up at the soldier, fear burning in her chest. "They will kill us," she whispered. The soldier did not turn his head. His eyes stayed fixed on the ruins ahead, scanning every shadow. His voice came low and calm, like stone unmoved by the storm. "Not while I stand," the mother shivered. There was no pride in his words, no arrogance, only certainty. He had carried her daughter through fire already, and now he was ready to do it again. But this time he faced more than flames. He faced men armed and eager to finish what the war had begun. Figures emerged from the smoke. 5, then 10, then more. Their armor was scarred, their weapons drawn. They walked with the slow patience of predators who believed their prey had no chance. Their eyes glinted as they saw the human, and the mother huddled near the broken stone. One of them called out, his voice sharp and cruel. "Hand over the girl. She is enemy blood. She does not deserve to live." The mother's heart froze. Her arms tightened around her daughter instinctively. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs would not move. The girl stirred faintly in her grasp, caught between life and death, too weak to even lift her head. The soldier stepped forward, rifle steady. His voice cut through the cold air. "You will not touch her." The enemies laughed, a harsh, echoing sound. One of them raised his weapon, but the soldier fired first. The crack of the shot rang across the battlefield, sharp and final. The enemy fell, silence sweeping for a brief moment before chaos exploded. The ruins shook with the clash of fire. The soldier moved with precision, each shot sharp, each step strong. He fought not like a man clinging to life, but like a wall that would not break, no matter how many waves struck it. The mother watched in stunned silence. Her people had always whispered of humanity's reckless courage, of their strange refusal to surrender, even when all logic said they should. Now, seeing it before her eyes, she understood. The soldier did not fight for glory. He fought because he had decided her daughter's life mattered. Yet for every enemy he struck down, more pressed forward. The sound of weapons roared, sparks bursting against stone as bullets shattered the ruins. The mother ducked low, shielding her daughter's body with her own. She whispered softly into the girl's ear, her voice breaking with desperation. "Stay with me. Please, my child, do not leave me now. Fight, just a little longer." The girl's chest rose faintly, a breath so weak it could vanish at any moment. The mother's tears fell onto her daughter's face, mixing with the dirt and blood. A sudden explosion rocked the ground nearby, throwing dust and smoke into the air. The mother coughed, choking on ash. She looked up in panic, searching for the soldier. Through the haze, she saw him, still standing, still firing, even as fire burned across his armor. He was wounded now. A line of blood trickled from his arm, another from his side. But his stance did not break. His eyes burned with something fierce, something unshakable. The mother realized then that he was no longer fighting only to protect them. He was defying fate itself. Enemy soldiers shouted as they closed in, but their voices wavered. The sight of one human standing unbroken against so many shook them. He was supposed to fall, yet he did not. One enemy aimed carefully at the mother. Her breath caught in her throat. She could not move fast enough to shield her daughter, but the soldier did. He turned, stepping into the line of fire. The shot hit his armor with a violent crack, staggering him, yet he held his ground. The mother gasped, tears spilling again. "Why?" she cried. "Why risk everything for us?" The soldier looked back only briefly, his face pale with blood loss. His voice was low but steady, "Because no one deserves to die alone. Not your daughter, not anyone." Then he turned back, firing again, his body a wall between them and death. The mother's grief twisted into something new, respect, awe, a feeling she had never thought she would hold for a human. She clutched her daughter tighter, whispering words of hope. "You hear him, my child? You are not alone. Stay with me, stay!" The girl stirred faintly, her lips parting as if trying to answer. A shallow breath passed, fragile but real. The mother felt it like a spark of fire in her chest. Hope. The enemies hesitated now. They had lost more men than they expected. Their courage faltered under the humans' relentless defiance. Some pulled back, their shadows retreating into the smoke. The soldier, chest heaving, lowered his rifle only for a moment. He looked at the mother, his voice rough. "She is stronger than she looks. She will live, if we can hold on." The mother nodded through her tears. In that moment, she believed him. She believed her daughter could return, and that humanity, strange and reckless, would not allow fate to claim her too soon. And as the last of the enemies melted back into the ruins, silence fell again. But this silence was different from before. It was no longer the silence of loss. It was the silence of survival, of defiance, of a moment when death itself had been forced to step back. The mother looked at her daughter, then at the human soldier who stood bleeding yet unbroken before her. She realized that something had shifted forever. This was no longer only her story, nor her daughter's. It was now a story of what humanity truly was, unyielding, stubborn, and willing to carry others, even when the weight threatened to crush them. The battlefield had fallen quiet again. Smoke drifted upward in thin grey curls, and the last echo of gunfire faded into the distance. The mother sat against the broken stone, cradling her daughter in her arms. The girl's breathing was faint but steady now, each fragile rise and fall of her chest a promise that she was still fighting. The human soldier stood nearby, his armor burned and bloodied, but his body remained upright, unyielding. His rifle hung loosely at his side, smoke still rising from its barrel. He had driven the enemies away. He had stood alone when no one else would. The mother looked at him, her throat tight with emotions she could not name. She had grown up hearing distrust of humans. Her people called them reckless, unpredictable, selfish. But now she saw something else, something her people had never spoken of. Humanity's will to protect. Humanity's refusal to let death claim what could still be saved. She turned her gaze back to her daughter. The girl stirred, a soft murmur leaving her lips. The mother leaned close, tears falling freely. "My child," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You are here. You are still with me." The girl's eyes opened, weak and unfocused but alive. For a moment, the mother's grief shattered, replaced by a wave of pure, overwhelming relief. She pulled her daughter closer, pressing her forehead against hers. The soldier knelt beside them, his movements careful. He checked the girl's pulse, his face unreadable, until finally he nodded. "She will live," he said, his voice hoarse but certain. The mother raised her head, her eyes wet. You saved her." The soldier shook his head. "She saved herself. I only gave her a chance," but the mother knew the truth. Without him, her daughter would still lie abandoned on the battlefield. Without him, grief would have swallowed her whole. A new sound echoed through the ruins, the approach of more soldiers. The mother tensed, clutching her daughter protectively. But these footsteps were different, familiar, her own people. Dozens of alien soldiers emerged, their armor shining under the pale sky. They stopped when they saw the scene before them, the mother with her wounded child, the human soldier standing beside them, his rifle still warm. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Weapons raised, uncertain eyes scanning the human. Murmurs passed between them. Humans were not supposed to stand here like allies. They were not supposed to risk themselves for someone else's daughter. One commander stepped forward, his voice sharp. "What is this? Why is a human with you?" The mother rose slowly, still holding her daughter close. Her legs trembled, but her voice, though soft, carried strength. "Because without him she would not be here. He carried her back when no one else did. He stood against death when even I could not." The commander frowned, his eyes narrowing at the human. The soldier did not move. He did not defend himself nor boast. He only stood there, silent, bloodied but unbroken. The mother turned to the gathered soldiers, her voice rising. "Look at him. He is not our enemy today. He is the reason my child still breathes." A silence swept across the group. The soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, their eyes shifting with unease. They had heard stories of human recklessness, but this was something else. This was not recklessness. This was defiance. This was protection. The girl stirred again, her weak voice carrying through the hush. "Mother!" The mother dropped to her knees, tears falling once more. "I am here, my child. I'm here." Her daughter's hand moved slowly, reaching for the human soldier. Her small fingers brushed his gauntlet, and she whispered faintly, "Thank you." The soldier's eyes softened, and for the first time since the battle began, a faint crack appeared in his hardened face, a quiet, weary smile. The soldiers watching could not deny what they saw. Humanity had done what none of them expected. Where others saw only an enemy, this man had seen a life worth saving. The commander lowered his weapon fully. "Then let it be known," he said reluctantly, his voice carrying to all. On this day, one human stood as more than a soldier. He stood as hope. The mother clutched her daughter, her heart overflowing. She looked at the human one last time, her voice trembling. "You brought her back. You turned my grief into life. I will never forget this." The soldier looked at her, his expression steady. His reply was simple, but it carried the weight of his people's spirit. "No one should be left behind. Not while we still breathe." The words lingered in the air like a vow, and so on a battlefield of ashes and sorrow, the story did not end with death. It ended with defiance, with survival, and with a bond forged in blood and sacrifice. The mother's grief had turned to shock, but from that shock came something greater: understanding. Humanity was not only reckless or dangerous. Humanity was the will to stand against the impossible, to carry another even when the burden threatened to break them. Her daughter lived, and because of one human, hope lived with her. And as the soldiers lowered their weapons, the mother knew this moment would never be forgotten. Not by her, not by her people, and not by the galaxy that still underestimated the strange, unyielding power of humankind.